the opportunity to start beginning to imagine that there is a ton of data. And Art and Bena, you just started to talk about the importance of body language, the notion of voice and intonation are just small moments of collecting and gathering data, starting to experience that. Art, can you talk a little bit more about the type of gathering as we're starting to think about the categories?
Well, yes. There really are three categories that we include. One we call reception, and that's being open and receptive to all those outside sources of information that you decide. And then there's also proprioception and interoception. And we're going to talk about those in just a moment. But let's start off with just a little bit of a review, because you already know what reception is. And that's being open to the smells and the touch and the feelings and the shapes and the sounds that we hear around us. I like to take an imaginary trip, if you will, of cooking some popcorn. And when we cook popcorn, popcorn is probably the only food, and I would challenge you to find some others, the only food that we can use all of our senses. For example, you can feel that kernel of corn, say it's hard and golden, and then we put it in some hot oil, and we pop it so we can hear it, and then we can see it and feel it. And it's interesting that you can see and feel the change from that hard round kernel to a soft, crunchy piece of popcorn. We can smell it as it's cooking. We can hear it. When we put it in our mouth, we can taste it. Can you taste that salty flavor? And so popcorn is the one food, there may be others, the one food that we can use to gather all of the senses. Now, why that's important is that you might want to use that with kids to teach them to be more alert to the smells and the sights and the sounds and the feel around them. So we feel things that are soft and things that are hard. We hear things that are soft and things that are loud. We see things that change their shapes. And so being open to all of those receptors, I think, is very important. But let me tell you about two other sensory receptors that we don't often talk about. In fact, we have not included it in our description of data gathering, but we will from now on. And one of those is the notion of proprioception. It's our brain's ability to receive signals from our fingers, hands, arms, and face. And so we use proprioception when we can't use our eyes. For example, have you ever seen an accordion player or a guitar player or a piano player who looks at the camera but doesn't look at the keys on the keyboard, or doesn't look at the strings on the violin or the strings on a guitar? They are using proprioception because they can know where the strings are or where the keys are without having to look at them. And so we use proprioception all the time when we are aware of something, but we don't have to actually touch it or feel it to be aware of it.
Bena, I just wanted to sort of think through with you, when it comes to proprioception, like the opportunity to start thinking about practice and training in connection with gathering data through all senses. Can you talk a little bit about that, Bena, in terms of how you start to see, like, I'm just trying to think about the notion of muscle memory, for example. So Bena, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, the person who we're going to be interviewing in our next session is going to talk a great deal about that, but he's my trainer. And one of the things that I said to him was, he always says, chin up, keep yourself looking forward. And I say, but if I don't look down, how am I going to know if something comes up, if there's a bump in the road? And he said, your feet will tell you. You have to train your feet to feel the ground. So that's a very interesting thing, because it's really takes a lot of thinking about it. Now, when you're young, that is something that I think young people sort of do without even thinking about it, because they're grounded, so to speak. And I think that it's that idea again of that muscle memory. You're being able to remember and you're being able to imagine it.